Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. We're going to go live with Student Government Association today, so I'm going to wait a little bit until they join on, and then we're going to chat a little bit and see what they're all about. Let them talk about themselves.
Hello.
Hey, Austin.
How are you? It's good to see you.
You too. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you guys for the invite as well. It's actually pretty neat.
Yes, this is a super cool thing we're offering with our office. Get to know some departments here on campus. I guess I'll just introduce myself. My name is Joanna. I'm an intern for the Student Engagement and Leadership Center, and we are here with Austin and the Student Government Association today to learn a little bit about what SGA does and how they can benefit the students here at UTEP and just what they do in general. So if you want to, I guess we can wait a little bit, maybe like 2 more minutes to see if anybody else will join. And then we can go ahead and get started, and you can just share a little bit about what you guys do. And I have a few questions if you want me to ask you. But yeah, we'll just wait a little bit.
Perfect. That's not a problem at all. Thank you, Joanna.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and then so as Joanna mentioned, so my name's Austin Stevens. I'm the Vice President for External Affairs from Student Government, and I've been involved for the last about, I think this is my 3rd year now. So I'm having a fun time, but I can definitely answer any of the questions that you guys have. I mean, from all the branches except for judicial, because that's the one I haven't been involved in. So, but I know somewhat, but we can help out the best that we can.
Yes, and like Austin said, just post your comments down below, and he'll answer for you and just get to know what SGA does.
Oh, by the way, I did see the video from Residence Live. Y'all did a great job with that one.
It's pretty cool, huh?
Yes, it was.
Yes, it's a pretty cool thing we're doing. I'm really excited for it.
Yeah. No, it's okay. I started thinking, I'm like, do I want to do this on a laptop? And then I'm like, I think it's going to be easier to just to hold the phone. So it's not too bad.
All right, so we have 12 people. So do you want to get started?
Sure. I don't mind at all.
All right, so I guess I have a few questions for you, but if you just want to introduce what SGA does, I can ask them a little later. If you just want to go ahead and get started, I'll open the floor up to you, Austin.
Sure, no problem. So basically at any university, or you guys kind of learn back in high school, that usually have like a student council that kind of oversees and represents the student body on a higher level than just a regular student. But that's not what UTEP SGA or SGAs across the nations do at their universities. They're actually very heavily involved both in the state policy and universities, not necessarily their guidelines, but we do our best to represent the 25,000 plus students that we have. And the way that we go about that is by every year, we usually have the Senate re-vote in our standing committees that go ahead and they're going to represent different sectors on campus. One being appropriations, so basically funding for events both on and off campus, for traveling. This year, it's a little bit complicated just because of COVID and the unexpected things that we've had to go through in the last 4 or 5 months of quarantine. But besides that, we also do we have the document review committee, which offers students the ability to kind of learn about legislative processes and how to write legislation if they ever want to go into like LSPI or law school, or understand the legalities of kind of what goes into physical policy and lawmaking. The other one is for SARC, which is what I think is a great committee that allows students to kind of, not necessarily get involved in the sense of like a senator or an exec position at SGA, but for our judicial branch, and then for helping out our legislative branch as well. That's exactly what SARC does, and it exposes our students to be able to do interviews on a higher level. The other thing that we do is that we have some ad hoc committees as well. So those committees are now covering a range of topics. Last year, the current rerunning second-term president, Jessica Martinez, decided to go ahead and bring back sustainability as a committee in order to make our campus a little bit more green, but also to kind of see what changes we can make here upcoming in the future to our campus to meet a modern age, if that makes a little bit of sense as well. We also do a lot of outreach, and this year we're trying to figure out a little bit more on how exactly we're wanting to get to all of our students as much as possible. But our outreach committee is the ones that, from this previous year, they were the ones that were highly representing us for the tailgates in order for us to definitely get students out to the game and kind of develop a little bit more of school spirit. But the cool thing that I think is great is that every year, SGA has, its members elected by our fellow peers, our students. But even more importantly is that all of our senators, the majority of them, as well as execs, are heavily involved at the university and or the El Paso community already. So we have a very huge, diverse network capability that we're able to reach out to multiple individuals and organizations, both here in El Paso, across the state. So it's quite amazing. And the last thing that I'm still kind of learning a little bit about, but we also represent the university and the UTEP student body at UTSAC for the University of Texas Student Advisory Committee. So myself, the president, and this year we actually got an additional delegate to go ahead and go to Austin to represent our students and what we best believe would be for us to either adapt other university policies or advise the board of trustees. Should we go ahead and adopt UTEP's platform? Should we adopt somebody else's platform? Or should we completely propose something new? It's quite an interesting opportunity for us to definitely get El Paso's shining star back on the map in our far corner of Texas. Okay, Joanna, I talked enough. You're more than welcome for questions.
All right, thank you so much, Austin, for that information.
Mm-hmm.
I guess a question I have for you is, how can students get involved? What does SGA offer that students can get involved, I guess, while school's on campus and virtually as well?
No, definitely. Originally, when asked that question, I would encourage, because all of our committees, all of our Senate meetings are open to the public as well, and most importantly to our students. So even being a senator, I would really encourage to have students come over and say, hey, if you want to learn more, definitely come in and sit on a committee, sit on a Senate meeting. This year we're still trying to figure out how that is going to work and how it's going to look being in a virtual format. But there are ways that we are going to be developing for students to be able to get involved, to be able to share their voice and give them a platform as well, to be able to for them to let us know what their concerns are. But what I think is really cool is that if students want to get directly involved in student government, it's not the fact that you have to go around on campus and consistently campaign or do all these things in order to get involved. You can submit and go on the Mind Tracker for an application, even if you're just a brand new person, a freshman to the university. And I really encourage freshmen to get involved, to our Excel, which is basically kind of like a freshman, or we've had different classifications of student come to that committee, but basically it's like a class that teaches you all about what we do as well. And this past year, the former chair and co-chair and the Excel committee, they did a phenomenal job on making sure that those students were heavily involved in what we do. And they went to the majority of events that the university did, as well as what we did too. So if there's students that are out there that will really want to get involved and or just have a curious idea of, maybe I don't want to get into politics, but how can I, learn, how can I learn, I don't want to say legal processes because we don't teach law, but, how can we learn more about how, bureaucracy in a government works? And what I really encourage is legislative assistants. So there are assistants that go in and they're not necessarily assigned, but if there's senators that are needing help with research, drafting some policies, drafting a resolution, trying to figure out like a special project that's going to make an impact on campus. Those LAs are very, very, very important to those senators in order to help them out in well, throughout their year, but their entire process as well, if that makes sense.
Okay, that's super cool. Thank you so much for sharing that. I guess another one is, what do students gain from joining SGA? You've kind of talked about that a little bit, but do you want to elaborate on that?
No, definitely. So going to UTEP wasn't originally my first choice. And I went to a private school beforehand, which was very interesting. But no matter where you go, when you go to college, you're automatically placed into a fishbowl, that was, your class could be 30 people, your class could be 100, 500, 1,000. Well, you're at a university now where you're going to have 25,000 plus individual. And that doesn't even include, faculty, staff, visitors to the university, the conferences that go on. And all of the universities you go to, they're either going to be the same, a little bit less, or double, or 4 times as much as students that we have. So student governments allow students to be able to go from a pool from the 25,000, and typically what I've said in the past is that you go from a pool of just being one of 25,000 to being one of less than 50, if that makes sense, and that includes like legislative assistants, our judicial branch, special advisors, or committee members as well. Like it goes much further than that. So it is a smaller fishbowl, but what it allows you to do is that you become a student leader on your campus, and you're able to use that to be able to say, hey, you know what? I have a problem with that. Or you always hear your friends, say that, oh, you know what? I really wish that we had this on our campus. And student government gives those individuals that are curious about wanting to get involved, not necessarily, the authority, like, yes, I can go and I can do it and I can get it done, but it gives them a platform to start and to speak from.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I guess to everyone who's on right now, do you have any questions for Austin, for what he's talked about or what you're interested in about SGA?
Don't be shy.
Yeah,
I don't like to, yeah. Just because I like to talk doesn't mean I like to hear myself talk.
If not, you can just email SGA, I guess, if you have questions, but post your comments even while Austin's continuing to talk. I'm sure he would love to answer your questions. But I guess another question I have for you, Austin, is how does SGA help student organizations, and how does it help the student body?
No, great question. So I'll answer the student organizations question first, just because that I feel I have the most experience in so far. So for student orgs, when it comes to events, especially for outreach, we usually, partner up with departments, but there are some organizations that we've partnered up with in the past as well. However, what I think is really cool is that, if you were, Joanna, when you were, I don't know your classification, but if you were a freshman going to university, did you ever think that you would have, I guess, the opportunity to travel?
Not really, no.
Okay. So SGA wasn't the first organization that I joined, actually. It was a global relations organization. And I was a 2018 freshman, came in, it was the I can't not talk today. It was the first organization that approached me, and they decided to reach out to student government for help for funding to be able to travel up to New York for a mock United Nations conference. And I looked at them and I said, that sounds crazy. Like, how can you just go up to, an overglorified like student council and ask for funding? I'm like, okay, yeah, like, no, I don't believe this. Well, we went through the process, and I was absolutely amazed about how easy it was to be able to go and talk. And I mean, of course, it's not a matter of, oh yeah, whatever you come, and you ask, you're going to automatically get, just because we are very limited based on the budget that we have per year. However, what it does give our students, especially freshmen, all the way up until your seniors and even into graduate school, is that if you're having a hardship traveling to a conference, or if your organization is, let's say, you're in a sorority, or you're a fraternity, or you're a law group that's traveling, for mock trial or some sort of conference or training or experience. And student government gives you the ability to write a bill, and you submit it to the committee, and you go and you talk before them. It's kind of like an interview. And then after that, the committee decides, you know what, we would really like to appropriate, X amount of funds to be able to help this organization or this individual out on their journey. I usually call it, I like to call it a journey, and I have for the last 2.5 years, is that it's a part of your experience in college, but it gives our students the ability, especially if they have a financial hardship, to say, hey, you know what, I really need some funding help with this. Is there a way that we can go ahead and submit a bill, ask for help? And it really does significantly defray the costs for any of our students that are wanting to go somewhere, and even more importantly, even throw events here in El Paso. That's something that typically we see more coming to student government that's asking for funding for travel, but in reality, there's also events that happen in our El Paso community too, such as there's an Iron Turkey Run that happens every year. Our senators are able to do events as well and partner up with other organizations too. So there's ways that we can do events and banquets, special award ceremonies that organizations have. And it really helps those organizations out, especially if they don't know where to start. So when it comes to student body, we really advocate on behalf of our students. And we're students as well. It's not like, oh, like once you're elected student government, now you're, university staff. It's when you're elected student government, you're representing all of these different constituents. Our senators represent, we have 25 senators, 17 of them represent about 1,000 plus students. And then we have our collegiate senators that represent every college. So for the collegiate senator, liberal arts, of engineering, health sciences, you're representing about, 8 to 6 to 4,000 students per one senator. But those senators are here to hear those students out, to where, it could be anything. I've had conversations with students that are like, you know what, we don't have enough resources in labs. We're consistently running out of materials, or, you know what, our professor has all these different books. I really don't know where to start. So those senators go in and they hear that out, and they're able to take that back to their dean and say, hey, for this lab, for this class, is there a way that we can figure out, some sort of deal in a sense that we can, defray or figure out a way to reduce the costs for that class? Or maybe there's a different approach that students have never, or faculty have never thought about before, that these senators can go out and advocate for, to say, hey, you know what, if you want to learn about flying, you can't, as an engineering major, just learn it off of a blueprint. But we have the War Eagles Museum that's up in Santa Teresa. So why don't we figure out a way in order to do some sort of school field trip for those students? And you actually see, aircraft that are 70 to 80 years old, and you're able to, see and visualize it. You're able, I don't know if you would be able to physically touch the aircraft, but it gives our students the ability to see these new and hear these new ways that the senators can advocate for to change at the university.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, that was great information. We actually have one question.
Sure.
Paola asked, how has SGA personally helped you, Austin? And how have you grown from your experience?
So coming to, and this is the most interesting thing, is that I'm not a big fan of bureaucracy. It's something that I don't enjoy like at all. But UTEP, SGA has allowed me to understand, why we have kind of sort of the language and the bureaucracies that go into place. But it's also teaching me how to become a more well-rounded individual about how to be an activist and an advocate in the community and the organizations that I'm a part of. So, rather than being, mortified to talk to my dean, Dr. O'Hearn, it's allowed me to actually get to know Dr. O'Hearn on a personal level, to be able to say, hey, you know what, I know a little bit about his background. Dr. O'Hearn is from, or he has ancestry from Ireland, and he's very passionate about histories, and then he's very, very, very willing to hear student stories out. But originally, when you think about, oh my gosh, I'm going to meet with my dean, what am I going to do? It's when I worked for the Beto campaign, I call it the God effect, where it's just like, oh my gosh, like I can't talk to them. But once you're able to learn, and that's what student government has given me the ability to, is that everyone is human. and it gives you the opportunity to actually go in and sit with a person and hear them out without having, you might have that fear factor for a little bit to where it's like, oh, I don't know what to say or how to say it. But it's given me the ability to learn how to be an ambassador and how to negotiate things out.
Thank you. That's
Great
awesome.
question, Paula.
Is there any other questions for Austin so far? Thank you all, by the way, for joining. This is going to be posted on the UTEP SELC Instagram, so it'll be on our IGTV. You can go back, look at it, go back and share it, do all good stuff with it, learn about SGA, share it with your friends. Is there anything else you want to share, Austin, about your experience or new events coming up? Anything that's new or interesting to you?
No, definitely. So currently, we're very proud to announce that all of our committees are now established for the summer. So our committees are up and running. They're functioning. They have their chairs, their co-chairs elected. So we are going to, really start pushing out ideas. The summer for student government is the time to really think about, how can we best represent our students this year? What are the needs of our students this year? What possible changes could we see in the future, and how can we get involved in those changes and make sure, of course, that our students' voices are heard on all those matters and affairs. And that's something that I think is really not necessarily overlooked, but it's kind of like, if your parents tell you not to do something, what are you typically going to do? You're going to leave, brush it off, or like, yeah, I'm going to do it later, whatever. But when you hear it from a peer to peer, when you hear it from a student to student, that is impactful change. And that is change. And it's not necessarily just change. It's a voice that you're going to listen to a little bit more, because you're like, you know what? I'm not hearing it from my dean. I'm not hearing it from, the university president. I'm hearing it from, an elected student representative on behalf of other students. They're in those positions for a reason. So, I mean, currently we are still trying to figure out, between events, how are we going to come up with, are we going to be virtual? Are we going to be, hybrid? But what I definitely will say is that there's 4 to 5 different alternatives that could and or may not happen. The virtual hybrids, half person, half on campus. When it comes to these events, but I have heard amazing stories from the ability that has come out of, this COVID-19 pandemic, which is the accessibility that we really do have with each other. Kind of like how, I mean, we're just like right now, we're online and we're virtual, we're having a conversation. And I think that's where a lot of that starts now. And that's something that I think we're really looking for right now, is that, hey, start a conversation with your student government. We'll be more than willing to hear you guys out. So as far as events, there's 4 to 5 different alternatives, but the summer is the planning time period for us to be able to figure out, how are we going to effectively do an event, and then how are we going to execute it with, either it being virtual, in person, hybrid. So it's interesting right now. It's something that I've never seen before, but I'm amazed at the work and the imagination and innovation that this year's student government has, for sure. And I think there's a question on here. What year does a student need to be in order to join? That great question. So originally I thought, oh my gosh, you need to have, all this experience in order to be a student leader. No, you don't. If you want to get involved, you can get involved even as an incoming freshman. I believe you do need to have a little bit of, or a few hours in order to be a senator when elections come around in the spring. However, you can get involved straight off the back about wanting to be an Excel student, a part of that committee, to where you're taught, the ins and outs of student government and how we're involved. You're taught, not governmental like legislation, but you're taught, a little bit how that's drafted, what work goes into that, and how can I, as a civilian in society, actually make an impact by being able to draft and submit, a letter, and maybe, a rec policy over to, our local representatives like Joe Moody for the Texas Senate, Texas House of Representatives, and then Veronica Escobar for our representative for Congress. it's really cool because it gives you the ability to learn how to do that. And you can do that as an incoming freshman. And the way that you go around it is that if you are an incoming freshman and you don't know necessarily how to work Mind Tracker, it's easy. You just submit an email to UTEP SGA at utep.edu. And when you, or SG, I'm sorry, it's SGA at utep.edu. You submit an email. We're still trying. I'm still trying to figure out all the emails and all the passwords for all that stuff. But you submit an email to SGA at utep.edu, and you just go ahead and let us know that, hey, I would really like to get involved. How do you think I can get involved? And it can be one of two things. Either you can become an Excel student and be a part of that committee in this year's class, or you can definitely get involved by being a legislative assistant to a senator. And typically, like, LAs tend to be like friends of senators too. But this past year, that's something that I saw that was a major change. And even myself, as the former Senate Majority Leader, I had two legislative assistants that actually, one of them went to high school with, really didn't have a major connection with them afterwards. He came in the door and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I know you from school, like, how cool. And we were really able, and they were really able to get involved, and they really helped me out with my committees and being able to learn, the policies and what all we do. So there's multiple ways that our students can get involved. It's just a matter of reaching out to us, so that way we can definitely get you connected in the right places.
Thank you, Austin. This is such a great information database that you have given us so far, I guess. SGA, I didn't even know, has so much to offer students and just help them get engaged throughout college and really benefit for the college experience. And I appreciate you so much for joining us and giving us your spiel about SGA and how students should get involved. And I really hope that students will benefit from this and you guys will get more of an engagement within SGA.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Joanna. And I definitely want to tell, your department, thank you as well. And then for anyone that listens to this as well, is that, college doesn't just have to be about, going to class, getting the perfect grades and GPA. You do need to always strive to become a better version of yourself. But something that I would definitely encourage is that through the organizations that I've been a part of on campus, and if you don't know how to get connected, and or maybe you are, the first person in your family to go to college and you have no idea how to go about that process, student organizations that, are a part of, the SCLC and UTEP really help you get connected. And it's a group that allows you to be able to say, hey, you know what? I struggle in math, or I struggle in history, or I struggle with writing English, you name it. You have no idea who you're going to run into in those organizations. I mean, just in my fraternity alone, we're a little bit more engineering centered, but we're extremely diverse in the majors and the individuals that are striving to get a degree. That's what everyone's in college for. That's the end goal. But the reality is that how you get there is all going to be up to you as a student. Yes, you need to meet your hours, but your extracurriculars will also help you learn about how to be a better, well-rounded person, or a jack of all trades in the workforce. How to develop, communication skills as well. So coming in as a freshman UTEP, I told myself I'm never going to get involved in student organizations. I was highly involved in high school. I'm not going to do it. Yeah, that didn't even last a month. Come February, already in an organization, and then by now it's like 6 or 7 at this point. But you don't need to do 6 to 7. Joanna, I know you know this, being you're in a sorority as well, right? Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah. So I know that, through your sorority and your sisters, you've probably reached out to one or two of them and said, hey, I need help with this. I don't understand, what this professor is teaching. And I guarantee you somebody in that room was like, you know what, I've taken that person before, and I know exactly how and or what you need in order to be able to, kind of bump up, your grade a little bit, and or just be able to learn about that individual's teaching a little bit more. Might not be a teaching style that you're used to, and after you have that friend that has helped you out, you're like, oh my gosh, I got this now. I know how to communicate a little bit better, and it just helps you overall.
That is so true. It's super important to have that group of friends and connections within college, because it's hard leaving your high school and being involved or not, and then coming to college and having this new experience. So it's a great way. SGA is a great way to meet new people and just get out of your comfort zone a little bit, but it's definitely going to help you out with any organization, it's going to do that for you. So like Austin said, I encourage everyone to get involved within college and, you know, join organizations and get out of your comfort zone and learn a little bit more about yourself than you knew before. So thank you so much again, Austin, for doing this with us.
Well, thank you, Joanna. And of course, go Miners. We'll hopefully see you guys soon.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.